in the basement. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter, co-host of the Stacking Benjamin Show, and welcome to Money Club Live. Normally, the stuff that happens on our Money Club, as you know, is reserved for paying customers, as they say, but not today. Today, we're bringing it to the streets. We have the headmaster of the Money Club himself from Ortis Academy, my good friend Aaron Velke's here.
Glad to be here, man.
And we're gonna wait just a couple seconds for people to get here, because today is going to be a little different than some of the chatty things, Aaron, that you and I have done in the past. We're gonna get on it. So here's what I'd like people to do. Number one is, this is going to be better if you have any goals or resolutions already in front of you. Also, if you have whatever device you're writing on, I don't know about you, Aaron. Let's talk about this for a second, because this is a kind of a soft topic, a lot softer than what we're going to get into. But I actually prefer not doing it like on my iPad or typing. For me, there's something about the tactile nature of writing my goals by hand that really connects it with my brain. Do you find that to be the same?
I do, and I'm going to blow your mind with a little bit of sharing of my tech. There's a tablet I have called Remarkable that takes writing like paper and saves it into different collections and journals, because I think there is something about not only the tactility, but then I review my journal on a regular basis and re-record reflections on my reflections. And I need to be able to access it, and the technology helps, but I want it to feel like I'm writing. So I totally get that.
The idea of journaling, by the way, has come up a lot in discussions I've had lately. I'm listening to a Tim Ferriss episode with Dr. Jim Loehr, who talks very famously about don't control your schedule, control your energy, right? So work from a place of energy. Think of yourself as a corporate athlete. But he talks about the importance of journaling for people. I don't journal. When did you start journaling, and how did that help?
I started 3 years ago, and I didn't really have a practice down. It was kind of haphazard. But what I was doing really early is I was ending my day and just writing about the day. And now I've got a much more disciplined practice. I have a metric. We're going to talk about those things in a little bit, but I track how many times I journal in a year. And now I journal thoughts, not recollections of the day. But what has been amazing is to go back to those things a year, 2 years later, and look at who I was at that time, what I was worried about, what I was doing, and to look at that and say, wow, I've actually grown a lot. And it provides tremendous perspective. It also allows me to pinpoint areas of my life that I wanted to change that maybe I've lost attention on, or to find new areas that I'm like, you know what, if I can get from that point A to this point B, I cannot wait to get to C. Let me make a higher goal to get like this progress going in an upward momentum.
I found it's funny, because what you're talking about now is, for a lot of us, ninja level. I mean, it sounds easy. For those of you that tried what Aaron's talking about, it's not easy. And but OG tells a story about going back in his bag. He did this maybe 2-3 years ago. He told the story, going back in a bag from something he had written the stuff down like 2 years earlier, right? Left it in this bag, had not used that bag in 2 years, took it back out. But because he wrote it down, because he had done every single one of those things,
right?
Every single one of them, just because it entered his subconscious.
It is amazing what happens when you put it on paper. And the mind just works in these ways where you always can look back, and I'd say 9 times out of 10, I've done the thing that I wrote down. And I might not have even been intentional about it, but the act of writing it changes the way that everything sinks in, and it just permeates everything else.
The intentionality, I think, is big, but your following metrics, which we're going to talk about a lot today, guys, having specific metrics, monitoring those metrics, journaling those metrics. Dr. Jim Loehr talks about that. In fact, it's funny. OG and I talk about, we use Strategic Coach, this coaching thing. And here is a page, my weekly planner page. And as you can see, this is half filled in, not filled in as good as it should be, but 3 critical results I need this week. At the end of the week, by the way, when I make up the new one of these pages, I go look at those and how did I do? The strategic projects that are ongoing. These are all the people that we work with, their names and what they're working on and what I'm working on with them. And then the piece that I need to do a better job on actually is free days, focus days, and buffer days. Like, how many days am I actually going to work on this thing? I'm a 7-day a week kind of guy. I always had a lot of pride in the fact that I will work my butt off. You might outthink me, but you're not going to outwork me. I've realized lately that is wrong. That is so wrong. Don't get me wrong. You're still going to have trouble outworking me, but I don't need to make that time box bigger. I actually need to make the time box smaller and spend more time away. Because I find now, Aaron, that I'm trying to spend time away, I'm actually better at my job. When I'm here, I show up, I get it done, and then I go do something else. And it's that rest and that time away that is so effective for goal setting.
Dude, you and I are in some significant alignment here. I also this year have set up focus flow days and free days, and have realized that the more energized I can get in rest, the faster I can sprint. So to your point, I'm not going to be outworked. You and I can go head to head on that, but
I'll kick your ass, man.
But the objective is for me to really understand my own limitations as far as production and rest relationships. And it's, we live in a world where entrepreneurs, especially, man, like culturally, it's just go, 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 never sleep, give up everything, sacrifice the dream, get punched in the nuts. And while I understand that, and that ideology lasted a long time in me and gave me a tremendous amount of momentum, it's time for me to evolve beyond that.
I totally agree. Peter talks about, by the way, bullet journaling. That's great. I mean, it takes 2 seconds. It is quick. You're in it. You write down the necessary stuff. You go back and look at it like Aaron talks about. That is a little different, but not a ton. Let's guys. So if you just got here with us, I mentioned at the top that if you have your goals in front of you, this is going to be better. Don't want this to be a next 40 minutes of hanging out with Aaron and I, and we get nothing done. We do a lot of chatty stuff. The Stacking Benjamins is a chatty show. Stacking Benjamin show is a chatty show. I do not want this to be just a chatty time. If you've got questions, ask them. But because this is Money Club, our goal now is different than it is in the Stacking Benjamin show. Our goal is to get a bunch of stuff done. Craziness that we're actually going to try to get stuff done. Us.
We're doing it.
It's so weird. So Aaron, people have their goals in front of them right now. Let's talk about where we start with those goals. Like, if I go down and I look at these goals, how do I really hone them?
The first step for anything, I think there's a really simple way to build in metrics. Metrics is where you've got to go. You got to have a metric, and you got to have a way to get there. So there's 2 things that will help you come up with some measurement. One is to figure out, like, is your goal something that you do regularly, like go to the gym? Or is it something where you've got to hit a target? If, for example, you want to, like, if your goal is to get healthy, then the measurement you might use is number of days in the gym, number of miles walked, number of times you did 10 minutes of exercise. But you will have to think about your process and the way that you do that. We're going to come back to that in a moment. If you
let me stop right there too, because I want to talk about measurement. And for me, what works in measurement, what doesn't. A lot of the time when people do measurement, they're measuring the outcome.
Yes.
And this is a problem a lot of people have. You can't measure the outcome. You can only measure the input. Don't get me wrong. Measure to see if your input created an outcome that you want. And if not, change that. But I love when you said, I'm going to do 10 minutes of X. I can do 10 minutes of X. I can't say I'm going to lose 30 pounds and eat Cheetos, right? Yep. I mean, and just have it be this flowing thing. It's got to be measuring what you're going to do.
We also spend a lot of time talking about, the lovely aspirations of goals without what's actually going to make this happen, right? So I think in many ways, just starting with what could I measure here is going to give you a strong foothold in the door. And if it's money related, especially, you're going to need to measure it, right? We all want to have more savings, but are you measuring? We all want to spend less money. Are you measuring? And if you haven't done that, you're just going to end up where you were. Or if you're not aware of where you were, you're going to end up somewhere you don't want to end up. And measurement is always that key. It is something I hated. I never was a measurer. I hated the ruler method of, like, I need to know all these facts and figures, but I will tell you, after years of being a gypsy, it has changed everything.
Yeah. When it comes to it's only when we measure it that we can really decide if it worked or not. Right. I mean, one thing that I want to add to your idea of measurement is when you're measuring, I like to put everything out on a timeline, put your goals up against each other, because sometimes sometimes we do one of two things. Number one, we make too many goals and they conflict directly against each other, but we don't see it unless we have it all on one timeline together. So timelining your goal and putting it out there. And by the way, guys, these are for not just your resolutions for this year, but these are your long-term goals. And I'll give you an example of long-term financial planning goals that don't work. There were so many times, Aaron, where people would tell me that they had two goals. They wanted to put junior through college. Well, what age? Junior's going to college at age 18. Okay. I would go to the whiteboard in the room where we were at, and I would put the timeline out, stick figure of mom and dad, whatever. And then go out and then put the age, but also put the age that mom or dad were going to be at when junior went to college. And then they would tell me, not really paying attention, they go, well, yeah, and I want to retire at 60. Well, 60 is junior's junior year of college. Like, you're right in the middle of this hugely expensive thing, and you're going to try to retire right then. Mm-hmm. Like, financially, we can do it. And I'd much rather know that at 30 than try to know it at 57 that oh my, what are we going to do? But so often we just look at the very next thing, but by timelining your goals against each other and then running them back to today, then we can start measuring the piece that I like, which is, what is my small bite that I can do today to reach this massive goal, right? Because sometimes we have these, I personally think if you're doing it right, you're going to have massive goals. Whatever it is, I mean, let's do it. And if you're going to do it, you got to be able to bring that back to today. What's the little thing I can do today? So if I go 10 minutes today on the treadmill or whatever it is, where does that get me in a year? Where does that get me in 5 years? Where does that get me in 10 years? But what's the little action I could take today for big result later? And I think timelining helps us do that. Quantifying, I guess, really is every bit as much as timelining.
Yeah, and we're a lot of us may be familiar with SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and set on a timeline, right? SMART goals, you can Google that if you want, but having a timeline without that boundary, you give yourself so much space. And anybody who is familiar with pressure knows that when you've got a boundary that's approaching, you act and operate a little bit differently. So I think I agree with you. Timeline is incredibly important to setting goals, especially financially. Otherwise, you may not push through the discomfort to make change, right? And if you want change, you've got to go through discomfort.
I want to talk about the discomfort here in a second, and with your next point. But first, we got a couple questions here that I want to address, Aaron, while we go. Number one is Rocky asking, is this what you're watching now? Is this replacing or similar to Money with Friends? The answer is no. Money with Friends, chatty show about headlines. This is actually a piece of our Money Club. So the Money Club, if you go to stackingbenjamins.com/Money Club, it's a place where people that want to learn the basics of money go to get lessons on all kinds of different things. And Aaron is the headmaster of the Money Club. So from time to time, though, we're going to do some lessons that are outside of the paywall, right? The paying customers. So, and this is one of those lessons. But Aaron, what types of things should people expect to learn at our Money Club?
In many ways, money is two things. It requires emotional dexterity and it requires education. And we've got both of those in here. When I say emotional dexterity, we may get triggered when we make a mistake. We may get hung up on fear. We may get caught up in addiction with spending online. I have been there. I have done that. And we have to nurture a space where it's safe to talk about money and address where we are. And secondarily, we talk and get educated. We have to incorporate new information. We may have to unlearn something. That's usually what's in the way. We have to unlearn something. And what we've got in Money Club is a variety of resources to help you learn about investing, learn about your own stability, how to build stability, how to work towards retirement, how to plan, how to build a budget. Let's make that B word cool, right? Budgeting has never been cool to me. And we're reshaping that so that people think of budgeting as just making a plan. We're making a plan, and we got all kinds of tools to help you with that.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to spend time advertising Money Club. We've done that before. We can even, Gertrude, who wrote what's on the screen right now, can maybe give us a URL. Just go back and look for Money Club. We talked about it right during our first episode of the year, the Magic 8 Ball episode. You can hear Aaron and I actually talk about Money Club, but there's a bunch of courses, a lot of courses on a lot of different financial topics. And then there's also places for people that are Money Club members to actually chat inside of there. All right, let's get back to goal setting, which is really what we're here for today. Dodo asked a great question, which I think this is timely right now. You know, we talked about setting these big audacious goals, but a lot of us this year, Aaron, we had setbacks. Yep. So motivating yourself and your family after an unexpected financial setback, how do you do it when the goal has to change?
Well, I will vulnerably admit that I had a major financial setback this year as well. And there are two things that I had to do to get out of that rut. The first, to my point earlier about the emotional piece and then the actual mechanical piece, I really had to just like forgive myself and acknowledge that I had made a mistake, that I had somehow gotten a little bit off track, and that I had done it with integrity. I didn't intentionally make an error. And to just sit with myself and say, hey, Aaron, you did your best and I appreciate the effort, didn't pan out, gave me enough in the tank to then go forward. And the second thing is I had to go get some support, right? I'm a coach and I have a coach, and my coach has a coach. And so it's always good to surround yourself with the right people. I got some more education. I learned from that mistake. I journaled about that mistake. And I went and got a little bit more educated. I took some online courses. And those were some advanced things because I made an advanced mistake. But I think forgiving yourself and getting educated are the two best things you can do if you've experienced what many of us have experienced now and in our lifetimes.
There's a great line that Jack Welch, the GE CEO, said, which is facing reality the way it is and not the way that you wish it were. When I've had huge setbacks, I had a year where I made no money, and I had a bunch of credit card debt, and my life in the mid 90s was just absolutely horrible. But I had to face the reality of where I was right at that point, and that still involved the things that we're talking about today. I had to rip up the old goals. I had to say, these aren't happening. And I had to set specific timelines when I was going to get specific things done. And what was great was, for me at that time, as the creditors were calling and people were hounding me, it gave me, Aaron, a peace of mind that I was going to get through it. And it didn't matter how much this person hounded me for money. I had a plan. Screw them. I'm just going to not answer the phone, and it will get done, and people will get paid, and I will get myself back on my feet. And sure enough, not only did I get back on my feet, but I learned a valuable skill, which was setting these very concrete milestones, and to a large extent, putting on the earmuffs and getting rid of some of this outside noise that doesn't make sense. Peter talks about talking about the Dave Ramsey phrase, gazelle-like intensity, right? Yeah, I was being chased, man. I was being chased by the lions. Yep. I had gazelle-like intensity. I wanted to stay alive. What's our next step, Aaron? So now we have these concrete goals. And by the way, if you just got here, have your goals in front of you, write these down, make them specific. Now, you probably can't do the timelining yet that we talked about, but timelining your goals and finding out specifically what you have to do today to reach each of those things and measuring them against each other, I think, is super important. And then, by the way, you also get into prioritization. Which one can I reach and which one can't I reach? So it makes your goals much more realistic. But once we get there, all right, that's where we're at, Aaron. Where do we go next?
Well, we brought it up a little bit lightly earlier. We want to remove the pressure of the outcome and focus on the input. And the way that I think about that is the lead. So we have leads and we have lags. Lags are what happens when we do the leads. So let's think about this just for a moment, because this is a complete reframe of what you've been told and conditioned to know. If you set a goal of, I want to invest $10,000, then one of your leads might be set aside $10, increasing in $10 increments every day of the year. It could be $100 every 2 weeks, but the input will create the output. I know a lot of people that set an investment goal, but they never set aside the money. So they miss their lead and then they don't get their lag. If you think of this from non-financial terms, you might say, all right, well, I want to travel more. So a lead of travel might be researching, where do you want to go, right? The baby step that will get you there. Then you come up with the travel list. Then you look at the flight. And these leads can be the steps towards the lags, the outcome. And this has worked really well for me because I often set these mammoth targets, right? Big numbers, big ideas, big visions. And I have to backtrack them all the way down. My director of education asked me, he was like, I really want to make sure that I'm spending time by myself this year. So I've set aside, a lot of time to just be alone. And he was like, how do I make a lead out of that? And so I kind of coached him through coming up with, how many times per week are you putting an hour of no on your calendar? And so this lead strategy is really about isolating the thing that you need to do over and over on a repetitive basis to achieve your outcome. So for fitness, that might be gym time or number of days you move. For education, that might be the number of times you do a Duolingo lesson. For your family, it might be the number of times you have dinner at home with everybody there, but it's the input that makes a good family. So really spending the time and thinking through what is it that's going to create the outcome that I want. Let's make that the goal, right? I've got on my goal list to have dinner with my family 36 times this year. That's 3 times a month. That is a tremendous lead. If I do that, what that does is it represents that I am a family man. Right now, I don't have a wife or kids, but that's with my parents and my brother.
3 times a month and you're a family man, dude?
I don't have kids. So that's with my parents and my brother.
Driving to go to your parents or wherever. Yeah, yep. Gotcha.
So that's how I represent my mission of changing into a more deepened family person. And, I've got a ton of goals here. I've got, the number of times I'm running, the miles I'm running, the number of times I'm in the gym. But I've really worked hard to drill down, and you can almost always drill down a layer. So if you're like, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay. That means you need to step on a scale, but that means you need to exercise. That means you need to know your current measurement, and we can always backtrack down, and knowing your leads can dramatically reshape what's in your journal, but will also tell you what's next. And it should feel like every lead is a single step on a long journey that makes it very approachable.
I'm going to tell you what this prevents too, guys. What Aaron's talking about is it prevents this thing that we do. And we all know people, and hell, it's probably half of us here that do this thing, which is we find ourselves chasing the horizon, where we have these, because I love the idea, Aaron, of knowing what I did every day and then looking back and looking at from time to time the ground that I covered, because looking at the ground that I covered versus constantly looking ahead leads to this horizon chase, which, by the way, gets you nowhere. We all know people that go, I will be happy. Well, we see this in the FIRE movement all the time, right? I will be happy once I quit my job. No, you're still going to be the same crappy person you are today. If you're not happy today, that's not going to make you happy. Don't get me wrong. It's probably easier to be happier if you're not surrounded by these negative inputs, but there's too many times are we basing our happiness on, and happiness is one of those horizon terms. I'm like, if I just reach that point down the road, I'll be happy. Then you get to that point, and you're like, oh, look, there's this other point down the road, then another point, then another point. And yeah. And it goes nowhere. And at some point along the way, you realize that that's a lie, it's all a lie. And you have to figure out how I'm going to have goals to improve myself and improve my situation. And, but I also have to enjoy the route. So it's as much for you, Aaron, when you talk about being out running, it's as much about enjoying that run and doing as much as you can on that run today as it is about, you're not gonna be happier when you finish the run. Well, I'm always happier when I finish. I'll take that back. Yes, but
you bring up two big points. One is that, to our point earlier about timelines and measurement, unless you're tracking these leads, it's very hard to know where you failed. But I also love this idea of checking in and having something to really put in terms of happiness. Like, I track the number of my lead for some of my happiness is, do I do a staycation? Do I just go away like in my own town for a weekend, right? That makes me happy. And am I sending thank you cards to people that have influenced my life? You got one, right? Like, am I giving away random books to strangers that I meet in airports? Am I doing random acts of kindness? I track those. Those are leads to me, right? Those are leads under my happiness, like, sort of column. And it allows me to check in. And one of the goals I have long-term is to be a thought leader in this realm of financial education. And the way that I built a lead out of that was the number of times I bravely post on social media. And last year I did 596 posts out of the 600 that I targeted. And what that says to me is progress, not perfection. And for any of you listening, the goal and the goals that you're building, if you really focus on leads, will give you progress. We do not expect perfection. And this will change your life, man. Like, you'll grow because of your goals. You should stretch towards them, but you need the system underneath them, and the system is the leads.
Yeah, and to look back and enjoy where you are at the same time. Totally agree. I want to add to this discussion of leads on my end, which is, I know that I'm a person who feels a lot of fear. I feel, in fact, if you've heard me interviewed on other shows, I have a mantra that I have to tell myself all the time, which used to be a Nike mantra before, just do it. And it's feel the fear, but do it anyway. It's not as sexy. I can understand why Nike got away from it. It's a little bit clunkier, but just do it doesn't work for me as much as feel the fear, but do it anyway. So I had to talk this morning to the co-founder of Netflix, and we do those interviews now. Is you guys that have listened to the podcast know, I'm doing these type of interviews fairly often. It's still intimidating is all get out, right? I'm talking to this dude who's done some really big stuff. And I have to tell myself several times, feel the fear, but do it anyway. But a great thing to do is, when it comes to your goal, your brain has all kinds of excuses why you can't do that goal. My brain has a ton of them, right? Working out. I don't have time to work out. I don't have the right equipment to work out. I'm not in the right climate. It's cold as hell outside, right? I've got all of these things that I do. And what a great mentor told me to do when it comes to each of your goals is write down every single one of those negatives. Write them down. Get them out on paper. And you know why you do that? Is because most of us, we cover those up and we try to tell our brain to just shut up and work through it. Your brain's really smart. Your brain's not going to shut off, and you'll be in the middle of this run going down the street and you're like, you know what? I can't do this. I can't, there's no way I can do that. So realize that your brain is super smart and write them all down. And once you write them all down, and by the way, I didn't realize how kick-ass this was, Aaron, until I did it. Once I did this exercise, I got to tell you, it blew me away how effective it was. Once I wrote them all down, then knowing that your brain is smart, draw a line, and your brain, once you have them in writing, remember when we talked about tactile, writing stuff down, how powerful it is? There's this connection in your brain. Once you do that, draw a line and have your brain solve it. And your brain will come up with something for everything. I don't have enough equipment. I don't have any money. Well, then look into body resistant exercises. Crap loads of body resistant exercises on the internet. It's too cold outside. Well, maybe for me, because I'm self-employed, I started and don't get me wrong, I'm in Texas. It ain't super cold like when I was in Detroit. So, but I am a whiner. Now I run at noon when it's warmer than running at 6 a.m. like I do in the summer, right? So I just change up my day. So I go out at a different time. My brain solves all these things. Your brain is brilliant. But what most of us do is, instead of using that brilliance, we try to turn it off. No. That's, I gotta, because too many people, Aaron, say, you gotta fight through it. You gotta, you're gonna have all these, nope, put the objections down, draw a line, solve every single one of those objections. It is amazing how well that works.
Dude, I love the idea of like dancing with your fear. I think that's really important. We tend to brush it aside, and look, all the studies show that the more you ignore it, the stronger it gets.
That's right.
And
yeah.
I really like this idea. I'm going to incorporate that, like putting the negative on paper. And look,
Oh, I think you owe me $10 then.
All right, I guess I'll Venmo you.
All right.
Honestly, that is worth $10. Like I will happily Venmo you $10.
What? So now we've overcome the objections that our brain brings up. Our goals are leads. They're measurable. We've lined them out. What's next?
Well, I'm going to ask everybody, even though I can't see you, to raise your hand if you struggle giving yourself praise. Like probably everyone's hand is up. I really, really struggle with this. And this is something that I've incorporated in the last 2 years. But I would set these lead goals. So it might be, for example, I've got 75 miles this quarter, and I've got 75 gym sessions this quarter. And once I get there, I need to set some kind of reward, or I may set intermittent rewards along the way. And what this really helps me do from a psychological perspective, it anchors progress as a rewardable trend. So I might say, all right, well, let me check in. If I divide 75 by 3 months, so that's a quarter, I need to do 25 of these things each quarter, each month. If I hit it, you know what? I'm going to go get a smoothie, right? I'm going to take an hour off of work and just go for a walk. Something that's going to anchor it in that I made progress towards this thing. And the trick is to find something in alignment that doesn't take you away from your goal, right? If I was like, I'm going to go have 7 double cheeseburgers, like that would sort of defeat the purpose of me doing all this work.
But that's still awesome.
It's
still
so
awesome.
Epic. But, from a financial perspective, one way that I did this, since this is Money Club conversation, is I said, for every $150 that I invest in a quarter, I'm going to set $10 aside. And at the end of the quarter, I get to buy whatever I want. No restrictions, no limits. So that, right, it's like less than 10% of my investment dollars. Just a little tiny bit is going into a fund that lets me have some fun and rewards the behavior. It says, you invest more, you get more. And that's going to keep me moving forward. And it's really hard to get over. It's very challenging to allow ourselves to say to ourselves, hey, thank you. Did a great job. But it will anchor the behavior in. It will change the way that you move forward. It will change your opinion of yourself. And, if you make a mistake, it came up earlier, if you make a mistake, you're going to know that your progress was the important part, because mistakes are inevitable.
2 things I want to comment on that. Number one is back when I was a financial planner, setting the rewards like you talked about also got rid of a problem I saw a lot of people have in financial planning, which was they come into my office, I get them all excited about financial planning. They, and I would always talk about balance, but hey, we're financial planning. We're going to do this right. It's ramen noodles nonstop. I'm going to deprive myself completely. Yeah. And then you do that for a week where you spend no money, and to celebrate, you break the budget and you go out and buy a big screen TV, and all of a sudden, all this progress is gone. Yep. So especially if it's a financial goal, setting ahead of time these smaller rewards gets rid of this boom bust cycle that I see breaks budgets all the time. Yep. I mean, how many times I remember when I was younger, I would go, Cheryl and I would look at each other and we go, we deserve vacation. All of a sudden I'm flying off to Florida or something, staying at a nice hotel because I deserve it when I couldn't afford it. Like there was nothing in that was helpful. I remember we're there on credit cards because I have no money, right? So I'm spending money at 27% interest that somebody else is rewarding myself because I deserve it, which also, by the way, brings up the second thing. When it comes to rewarding yourself, if you plan these well, you still need to reward yourself. A lot of us have this guilt, right? That you were talking about. We don't praise ourselves. We have this guilt. You don't reward yourself. Let's be clear. You're not rewarding yourself because you deserve it. you're rewarding yourself because you have to to do, Aaron, what you're saying, to plant the behavior. Get this thought process about, I don't deserve it. I do or I don't. It's not about deserve it.
Yep.
I had the same thing happen when I decided I was going to take days off, these free days, that I don't deserve a free day. I got 50 things around the show that I got to do, or around my practice, or around whatever the current fire is. I got to take care of that. You don't take free days because you deserve them. You take free days because without them, you're going to crash and burn in the middle of a big project. So I think you have to kind of change the language there as well.
Yeah, dude, it's super important to mind your mental health, and the reward that we're talking about here doesn't need to be a thing, right? So far, we've just kind of talked about like a thing or an activity. It could be like, write a thank you letter to yourself. Like the methodology, again, the progress is much more important than the actual outcome. And if you're setting big goals, if you're sitting there trying to figure out how you're going to get where you're going, just some incremental self-love is super critical to you becoming the person that achieves the goals, right? Like, as you achieve your goals, you kind of evolve, you change, you adapt, right? If you are not in shape and you're getting in shape, what's the point of being in shape if you don't actually pause to enjoy it, right? Yeah. Do something that you can now enjoy that you couldn't before as a reward, and you'll want to stay in shape. And that's sort of the trick here. We want to retain the processes and the leads that we're doing.
Which is, by the way, comes back to journaling. I always forget that Chex Mix is the bane of my existence, but I love it. And then I feel like crap the entire holiday season. But if I journal the fact that makes me feel like crap, and I stop feeding myself the stuff that makes me, it tastes so damn good, but it's a lie. The cake is a lie. In this case, the Chex Mix is a lie. I want to, guys, Aaron and I are about to wrap this thing up. This lesson on Money Club. I want to talk a little bit about Money Club. Money Club is a place where people get very structured lessons. So if you're somebody that needs some structured lessons in 2021, you want to get that base of learning about money, whether it's you. I know there's programs that we have, Aaron, that are for the whole family, things that are just for adults, things that are just for kids, but it really isn't about age. It's about levels. Where you're at right now with your money. Talk about almost like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, right?
Yeah, we decided, we've done a lot of work with kids. We work with thousands of kids, and we've worked with now hundreds of adults. And we've realized that it was not really about age, the way education breaks stuff down. So we divided it by stage, and we said, hey, we believe that there's a foundational level, there's a stability level, and there's a growth level. And wherever you are, we're going to help you figure that out. But we have been very intentional about solving one of the problems that I had. And that was watching someone tell me about money that didn't know me. He didn't know anything about me. He didn't know what I cared about. He didn't know what I wanted. He didn't know none of it. And we have been so intentional about listening to what someone wants, identifying their personality, helping them figure out their values, understanding their attitude. Like, these sound like, kind of gems that you keep off to the side, but like, this is the main event. Understanding yourself, your relationship with money. And then the mechanics have a sequence. So if you are like, I'm a spender, man, you put me in front of cash, it's gone. It's just,
it's me.
So I know that if that's my behavior, so back to leads and lags and goals, I need to automate, right? I need to automate saving. I need to automate investing. And that allows me at the end of the month to say, okay, well, I got some surplus. Now I can go have a field day. But I need to know myself before money. And Money Club is really a space where that's not only safe, but it's rewarded. It's welcome. We love when people are like, hey, I have a question. I'm going to be vulnerable. Because look, the fact is, money is still taboo. My parents never talked about it. I know my friends' parents never talked about it. And we were left just kind of wondering, where do I go to ask a question with someone who's not going to tell me the same thing that's on 9,000 blogs? Because that is for a generic audience. Aaron, I have a name. I want help. Can someone step in and help me? And Money Club is not only the place to get the education, but it's a place to have that conversation, and we can connect you to all kinds of resources once you're ready.
Yeah, we're really proud of it. stackingbenjamins.com/money club. If you'd like to join us over there after today. Glad you guys were here for today's Money Club event. Paul has a great question. Paul, I love this question because we're going to make an important distinction here, Paul. What kind of goals are important for early retiree figuring out the next chapter? Other than tracking spending, net worth, and budget, I will tell you all of those things are secondary. And this is what this, by the way, Paul, isn't even you. This is what money geeks do. All this stuff is secondary. The first thing to do is to think about what you want to do. And then I would put those on a timeline. I would say, every year I want to go on a trip, or every 5 years I want to go on a trip, or every whatever. I want to join this group. I want to be a part of this thing. Here's a trick that I use because I have a lot of trouble with this, and I use this approach with clients as well, which was take me to a year before you're going to die. And this is really morbid, but take me to a year before you're going to die. Who do you want to be on that day? Who do you want to be? And so I said, I want to be active, right? I want to be active. I want to be a resource for my kids. I want to be traveling. And I don't want to worry about money. I want to do whatever the hell I want to do. I want to at that time be able to do, and don't get me wrong, I don't have big taste. I don't, need a bunch of rich stuff, but I largely don't want to think about my cash a year from death. And then the mentor that ran me through this initially, when it was taught to me, said, okay, if you are that person, active, resource for your kids, for the community, you're traveling, a lot of people die because they atrophy. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are people that die of serious diseases and bad things happen, but you got these people that they work for 62 years and then they die at 63 because they just sit in front of their chair with nothing to do. And if you do all these things, how much longer are you going to live? How much longer would you live if you're this person a year before death? And I said, Aaron, well, hell, I'll live another 12 years. I just, not even really thinking about it, just 12 more years. So instead of 85, I said, I'll live till 97. And then my coach brought me back to, and this is what I would do with clients. It says, why am I not going after those now? Why am I not doing those things now? So my goal now is to not worry about money. Not there yet. I'm a natural worrier, so I will worry about money. But how do I get there? I want to travel. I mean, we have the joke on the Stacking Benjamin show that I talk all the time about going to Bavaria or Southeast Asia. All the places I go because I want to go. I want to be a resource in my community. I'm a member of I work with the nonprofit here, building walking trails in Texarkana. And then last with my family, right? I want to do these things. So those are the types of things, Paul, I would do. Then all the things you're talking about, tracking spending, net worth, and budget, those are all fuel for those things, because then it gives your tracking direction, right? Now you're tracking, you're not just tracking to track, you're tracking because Cheryl and I have great money meetings now because of the fact that we know where we're headed. So I think that's where I'd start. Anything to add there, Aaron?
Well, one, Joe, this is the most meaningful and fulfilling conversation we've had yet. I just got chills listening to that, and I want to yes and that, because all of that is super important. Paul, as an early retiree, I will tell you that when I quit my job and decided to lean in on being a very purposeful individual, the question that I constantly had to come back to is what's going to make me happy. And, in many ways, I'm very lucky to be able to have figured out how to do what I love for a career. But I will also say this: money will only facilitate the choices that you make. And if you flip that backwards and let the choices you make be dictated by money, you'll end up in spaces that you may not necessarily find as happiness. And Joe's point about who you want to be in this sort of deathbed confessional may really help you articulate what it is left that you want to experience. And I would argue that the entire purpose of a life like this is to experience something, whether that's travel, whether that's mentorship or coaching or give backs or philanthropy, but the money will facilitate those things. And
it's a great question.
It is, you know what, even more than that, Joe, Paul, you are the star child of so many people that have this question but are not brave enough to ask it. So I really just appreciate that you shared, like, hey, what do I do here? You know, you can build leads out of all of these things. You can build tremendous goals out of all of these things if you ask the right question. And that, my friend, is the right question.
Yeah, good stuff. I think that's also a great place to leave it. If you'd like to join us at Money Club, stackingbenjamins.com/Money Club. Aaron, thanks for a great session. Teach people our goals. I really appreciate it. Happy 2021 to you, my friend.
Dude, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. It's got some great questions and comments. And John, I love your goal. If I can be of any service along that path, man, feel free to reach out to anybody listening. Find us. We would love to have you in Money Club.
Yeah, we did. And we passed right over. I read John's goal too. And I got to tell you, the dopamine hit's pretty damn cool.
It is.
It is pretty damn cool. And that fuels the next thing. And by the way, when you get there, make sure, John, that you've got goals beyond that ready to go, because you'll be on this kick and you want to take advantage of it. So good stuff. All right, friends. See you guys later. Thanks a ton.